Welcome to Tehachapi. Sit back and relax as Key Budge and Corey Costello talk about things that are happening in and around Tehachapi. Here's Corey and Key.
Welcome to another episode of Tehachapi. Key Budge, Corey Costello. Corey, we've got some kind of cool things we need to talk about today. There's lots of things that have been going on here as we change seasons again and go from...
Change seasons briefly or briskly, as we always do in Tehachapi.
I know.
There's no time. I mean, we have 4 seasons, but sometimes they're shorter than others.
And as we transition from summer to fall, I don't know there was much of a transition. Fall, we'll be heading into winter. I don't know really what to expect other than the calendar flips.
Yeah.
And as we move along, but there are some neat things. And today we're going to talk to a local author, and we've talked to local authors. We had G.E. Perlin earlier in our episodes, but today something special. This young lady, 16 years old, she's created her own comic book.
Nice.
So, and she's also been featured at the local Comic Cons.
Cool.
Yeah, I found that out. I did a little research talking to our librarian, and Veronica was sharing some info, some insights. So, tell you what, why don't we welcome into Tehachapi our special guest today, Seda Wolf. Seda, welcome to the show.
Hi, it's great to be here.
We got to know. I mean, you were kind enough. You and your mom dropped off ash cans, the previews of Soulstream, and we got a chance. And thank you for autographing those too. We appreciate that.
Awesome.
But
yeah, you're welcome.
tell us about the idea. Where did it come from? Where did you develop this? This is pretty cool.
Well, I wanted to make a story that had elements of superhero comics, but also fantasy elements as well. I've been wanting to make a comic for quite a while, and this is the idea that I ended up settling on, and I'm very excited with the direction it's taking.
What's that process like? I mean, what for not only the creative process, because obviously a lot goes into that, but that process of from creation to publication. What is that process like?
I spent a long time trying to write and plan out the story because I really think that it's important to have a good plan for a big project that you're going to try to work on, because otherwise you might have to start over if you change your mind on stuff. And I spent a long time planning it. Then I wrote a script for issue 1. I showed it to my parents and they liked it. So then I started drawing the pages. And then once I had 8 pages, I was able to submit it to Scout Comics, and they actually picked it up, and now it's gonna get published, which I'm very excited about.
How long ago did you start the process?
I think maybe it was a long time ago. I'm 16 now. I started working on this comic when I was 15, and I'll be 17 by the end of the year. So it's definitely, so far, it's been a very long process.
I was just going to say, where does the thought that I want to create my own comic come from? Was there something that was school related that got you creative, or do you just have that creative energy, as a young lady where you're going, you know what, there's something missing, and I think I've got an idea to fill this area?
Oh, well, I think one of the reasons why I decided to try to make a comic was because I was really, it was at a time when I was really trying to improve my art. And I figured that if I made a comic, I would have a lot more practice drawing characters like repeatedly and from different angles and in different poses that I wouldn't have been able to come up with on my own, like separately probably. Another thing was I was looking everywhere for a story like Soulstream, and I couldn't find it. So I decided I wanted to make one like it myself. Okay, I'm very sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
And then I'm sorry, my brother just walked in.
That's fine. We can edit it. It's great. Don't worry about it.
See, that's the great thing about having a brother, right?
Yeah.
He always, his timing is not exactly perfect. Now, well, let me ask you this: since your brother stepped in, stuck his head into your room, is he featured here in the comic, or is he not Marcus?
So Marcus takes elements from both my brother and my dad, I think. Although as I've written him, he's definitely branched off and become kind of his own person. Kind of like how Marie originally had a lot of things. She was very much similar to me. But as I've written her, she's also branched off and kind of become her own person. And I think that's really interesting too, because I think as I write these characters, they become more and more developed, and then I love all my characters so much, and I'm very happy being able to make a story like this.
You know, when we've spoken to people before that have you know, they've written a book. We come across artists all the time, but what about, I mean, a comic book is different because you did both. You created a story, you had to do character development as you talked about, and then you also had to do the art. So how much work goes into this, and obviously how much creativity, considering you're kind of taking two things, you're taking art and literature and putting them together into one piece of work.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So making comics is an incredibly, like, it takes forever to make comics for sure, because like you said, you have to make the story, and then you have to make the art. And especially since comics are a medium that are very quick to read, like you can flip through a 20-page comic in probably 5 to 10 minutes, but it takes me 5 months to draw those 20 pages. So it's definitely uh it's a little discouraging to see how long it takes to make a piece of media compared to how long it takes to consume said piece of media. But I think it's definitely worth it, and I spend a long time every single day working on my comic. I'm making pretty good progress too so far this year. I think it's going pretty well. But yeah, making comics takes a very long time. But it's also, I really like making comics because it's a very accessible way to tell a story. Uh, Other types of mediums you can use to tell stories, like animation or video game design, have other challenges that make them longer to produce. Like animation, I enjoy animation, but it takes a very long time to animate something. Almost probably making animation takes even longer than making comics. So it definitely, and especially since most animation is made by multiple people, and I'm the only one working on my comic, so making a comic is a much easier way for me to get my story like into existence faster. And with video game design, I've tried to make video games before. I made one fairly big game and I submitted it to a contest in 2017, and it won that contest. So that was, yeah, that around middle school I spent a lot of time trying to make games, but coding and game design aren't really my favorite things. So I ended up because I realized that the reason why I liked making video games was because of the story and the characters. So I decided that I should try different mediums of telling stories that didn't require as much um, like coding and game design stuff, because I really wasn't as interested in that.
You know, when you find an interest, a passion for something, it's much easier to do. You know, so if you've gravitated towards the comic and you have a passion for it, you know, it's just gonna flow. Now I'm curious though, as you go through the written process and you write the story and then you start to illustrate behind it. Do sometimes as you're working and you're creating the illustrations, does it start to change any of the plots or where you think the story could go, and you go back and then start to have to rewrite because you've got once you've gone from that written part of creativity to the artistry, the drawing, that it kind of spawned a new thought or idea or direction?
Well, I think definitely one example where something similar to that has happened to me is uh, later on in the book. There are some fight sequences in issues 2 and 3. There have been fight sequences, and I struggle very much with fight sequences. So a lot of the times, those scenes changed a lot from the script to the page, just because when I was scripting it, I like hadn't really visualized how I would draw the actions I was writing down, or I would write down too many actions for a single panel, which made it impossible to draw because you can only really have one action per panel easily. So yeah, I think definitely writing and drawing more complicated sequences with more action type elements. And actually there was even one time recently where I was working on a fight scene, and it ended up being I ended up having to add a few pages to the issue just because I didn't have enough pages for all the stuff that needed to happen in that time. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of back and forth changes that happen between writing the script and drawing it.
What's your background like with, I mean, obviously you seem to know plenty about comic books. So have you just been a lifelong fan, collector, that kind of stuff? Is that what sort of got you involved in the comic book world? And does that go back a while?
Well, so actually it's pretty interesting because I wasn't I didn't really know very much about comics until a couple of years ago because I've always been interested in like just the medium of comics in general, but like mainstream comics, like superhero comics and those types of things, I always was interested in them, but it was really hard for me to get into them because there's such an incredible amount of content there that it's really hard to know where to start if you haven't really looked into that kind of stuff before. And then a couple years ago, I met my best friend Cora, and she really loves comics. So she was able to help me kind of get into comics. And we went to a Comic Con together. Last year, we had a table together at the Bakersfield Comic Con, and we sold our artwork, and that was really fun. But yeah, and I think, and also I think for my whole life, I've occasionally dabbled in comics, but I've never had a project this big that I've actually like really gotten into before. I've started like I keep finding old pages of comics from when I was younger that I never finished, but which I think definitely those experiences were really valuable for me in getting to where I am now. But yeah.
Has the comic book market changed a little bit in terms of this? As an example, when I was growing up, we were kids of the 80s and 90s, and we were suckered into baseball cards. We were all told they were going to be worth a fortune, and we were baseball fans, but we collected baseball cards just to find out years later that they printed thousands and thousands and thousands of them. So everything we had is just worthless. And then for a brief time, we got into it. Some friends of mine got into comic books because it was right at the time when they killed Superman, and so the Superman death issue was a big deal. But it was all about collecting the comic. We could have cared less what the story was. We were just trying to collect the comics and keep them sealed. And so never we'd cash in down the road. And I still don't think we actually cashed in. But has that changed a little bit? It seems like that it's more about the story now and not so much about, obviously folks are going to want your first edition and that kind of stuff. But is it more about the story and the content now than just kind of the collectible nature of comic books?
Well, I think so. I don't know a ton about the comics industry as a whole, but I do think it's really interesting too how like recently there's been more of a push for all ages titles from most of the publishers. Because I know originally most comics were very much aimed towards kids, and there was even a lot of censorship stuff to make sure that comics stayed appropriate for children. But then as time went on, all that stuff got kind of left behind, and most comics ended up being geared towards adults because all those kids who had been reading the comics grew up and started making comics that appealed to their own demographic. But I think recently there's been a really big push for all ages media in comics, which I think is really great. And my comic is part of a new all ages line from Scout Comics, which I think it's going to be great, I think. But
well, I also, and the fact that you're female, I don't think there's a lot of female representation in comic books. Is that? I mean, I don't remember. I mean, I'm much older, and I'm older than Corey, but I don't remember.
He got the first Superman issue ever,
right,
actually.
Exactly. But I don't remember growing up and seeing female representation in comics. And I mean, to me, I look at this as a strong female presence. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I think definitely. That there is not enough female representation in comics, both in characters and in creators. So yeah, I definitely am very happy about my comic and the female representation in it.
And then, with that being said, even though with you and there's female representation, there's also male representation as well. Let's get into Soulstream. Tell us about it, because everyone that's listening, we've got a chance. Corey and I have got a chance to cruise through the first 8 pages. We're ready for the rest of it. But everyone else is kind of like, hey, well, what did we miss? What's coming? So let's fill in the listener that hasn't even seen the ash can yet.
Yeah, so Soulstream, the first issue is about Marie and her brother Marcus, and they find a portal to another world where they meet the mage goddess, and the rest of that happens in the rest of issue 1. But in this alternate world, the entire area where their hometown has been completely destroyed. So they have to basically save this world.
And so the journey, how many series of or issues will there be in this first season, if you will, of Soulstream?
Yeah, so there'll be 5 issues. The first issue is coming out in January, and then the issues 1 through 5 will be collected into a graphic novel that will be releasing a couple months after the issue 1 release, and it's part of one of the Scout Comics imprints, their nonstop imprint, where they release issue 1 and then they release the rest of the story in a graphic novel format. And the whole comic, with the 5 issues, I think there will be around 100 pages. And I'm really excited for people to see the graphic novel because there's a lot of really great characters that get introduced later on in the story that I'm really excited for people to meet.
With Soulstream and this adventure that takes place, I mean, I'm going to call it adventure. Is adventure a good word?
I think that's a good word.
Okay.
Yeah.
That Marie and Marcus take this journey. Can you share any more? Can you give us any more insights onto what they're going to see other than this alternate universe that they've been exposed to through this portal and these? And is that from the bracelets? Is that where? Or am I getting ahead of myself?
Yeah, so Marie, the mage goddess, gives Marie a bracelet called the Ocean Bracelet, and she can use it to transform into Soulstream and have superpowers. And yeah, and as the story goes on, I really can't say too much about where the story is going.
Gotta buy the issues, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if you buy the story, you can find out what happens in it.
There you go.
Well,
yeah, and I think Sada's got it already figured out. I mean, on a couple of occasions, I've even heard her promote Scout Comics, and I mean, this is a business person who knows exactly how to do this, and it's very impressive that you're properly promoting your publisher and your story and saying things like, can't tell you too much, gonna have to find out in the next issue.
It's the ultimate tease.
Great. I love it.
Now, do we have any shops locally that have committed that you can say that issue 1 will be there January 13th?
So we don't have any comic shops in Tehachapi,
right?
But there are comic shops in Bakersfield and Lancaster that I've distributed ash cans to. I've given ash can, like, promotional ash cans to hand out to. I've given them to Silver Wolf Comics, Man Bites Dog Emporium, Horizon Comics, and Bases Cards and Comics. And I don't know if any of those shops will be pre-ordering issue 1, but I think if people go in and request for them to pre-order issue 1, I think they will.
So let's give the names of those shops again. So we'll give them a little shout out, but then we also want to put a little pressure from our listening audience to go out and tell those shops, if that happens to be one of their shops, that they need to pre-order Soulstream so it'll be there January 13th. So what are those shops again?
Yeah, so in Bakersfield, there's Silver Wolf Comics and Collectibles and Man Bites Dog Emporium. And then in Lancaster, you can find Horizon Comics as well as Bases Cards and Comics.
I know Bases. I've been there
Nice.
before.
Nice.
I still collect baseball
Cards,
cards.
yeah, exactly.
And comics as well. But excellent. Okay, so we want folks to go out and request Soulstream. And if they want to take a look at the preview, if they want to get a sneak peek, where can they go online? Isn't there something that they can take a peek at and they can kind of get a sense of what the animation looks like, these very creative drawings, and a little bit about the characters?
Well, the Ashcan preview it's not officially available on the Scout Comics website yet, but I know it will be at some point. I can't say quite, I don't know when that will be, but I know it will be up there. And then I think online also you can find a synopsis of Soulstream as well as the order code.
And that's at previewsworld.com.
Yep.
And they can go ahead and take a look and at least get a glimpse of some of the images that you've put together and the creation of this. So they get another inside look at Soulstream, and they can put that push on our card shops and comic shops. So what else can you share with us? Or have we kind of squeezed as much information as we can about Soulstream? And before Scout Comics says, hey, Seda, you're giving them too much.
Well, I think everything I've said about the story is probably about all that is currently like published as far as like plot synopsises and other things on the internet. But yeah, I really hope that people will pre-order the book and then read the graphic novel when it comes out in several months, because I'm really excited. I've worked really hard on this story. I really want as many people as possible to be able to read it.
I'm encouraged by just like I said, even at 16, the professionalism that you have is very cool. I think you have a bright future. I mean, Soulstream is going to be its own thing, but I'm sure this is just the beginning, I would assume, of what you're hoping to be a very long career in this field. Is that sort of your hope?
Yeah. Oh, and also thank you. But yeah, I hope that I can work on lots of more projects throughout my life in not just the comics industry, but I'd also like to try out things, jobs and projects in the animation industry or the video game industry too. But yeah, I definitely I definitely want to keep making comics.
We've got some other, young kids that are interested and they find this an inspiration. What would you tell them if they say maybe they want to be an artist, or they want to be an author, or maybe it's a comic book they want to create? What would you tell, someone that's looking up for you for advice that's, as young as you are, but you've already experienced a lot? You have anything you would share with those young people that have aspirations of maybe following what you're doing?
Yeah, so for anyone like that, if for anyone who wants to make something, I think you should definitely just go ahead and make the thing that you want to make, because I know that a lot of times it feels like your skills haven't progressed enough to where you could make something that you could really be proud of, or you just feel like you aren't ready to try to make something big yet. But if you really, really want to create something, I think that you should just go ahead and start, because that even if your skills aren't quite where you'd like them to be before you start, as you work on this project, your skills will improve. And then eventually, just through working on this project, one day you'll realize that your skills are in the place that you've wanted them to be for a very long time. And I also think that people should definitely try to make the kind of media that they'd like to consume. Like, just if you make something that you're really deeply passionate about and you create the kind of story that you just really wish existed and you wish that you could read it, then that in itself will be enough motivation for you to just do your best and try to create this thing.
I got one last question, because I talked to Veronica Wilson over at our Tehachapi library, and she bragged on you quite a bit. And she talked about Comic-Con, the local, what they've hosted and down at the Kern County. Tell me about that experience, what that was like with our local Comic-Con that she's put on here in Tehachapi, and then the Kern County version.
Yeah, so yeah, those experiences were definitely really fun. I know that the local Comic-Con that we had, that I was, me and my friend Cora, we had a table there, and we showcased our artwork. And I think that was a really great experience for both of us, just being able to talk to people, because talking to people is difficult sometimes. So it's great practice. And we were also able to show our art to lots of different people, and it was really fun too. And I think that was definitely a great experience. And then the Bakersfield Comic-Con was really awesome too, because that we were able to sell our artwork, which we hadn't done before. And that was really fun too, because we got to like figure out our table setup and talk to lots of different people. And yeah, those experiences were really great. And I hope that once conventions are able to happen again, we can do more activities like that.
Well, welcome to Tehachapi Virtual Comic-Con today.
There you go.
This is the best that we can offer you, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Oh, Thank you.
And great job, Seda. I'm very encouraged by the creativity and the business acumen and everything you got going on for you. So looking forward to seeing where this thing goes. And proud to call you a Tehachapi resident, because we know we're going to hear much more about you in the future, I'm sure.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Corey, Seda Wolf, wow. 16, almost 17, but she started this at 15.
Yeah, I mean, no, the part too, I mean, obviously it's impressive to, like I mentioned, to combine artistic talent with the ability to develop a story. So you're basically writing, as she kind of points out, a graphic novel. You have to animate each scene and then come up with a story and the content and the characters and all kinds of stuff in the background there. But then just to have as well spoken as she is for 16, 17 years old, a great interview. You know, I've spoken with folks from all walks of life, and usually when you speak with teenagers, they're still struggling, just to communicate. Great communicator, and again, her business sense, shouting out to Scout Comics, her publisher, just doing it naturally, super impressive, and I'm excited for what she has to offer.
She understands marketing.
Yeah.
She mentioned demographics. At 16
Right.
years old, she has demographics and the type of media that you consume. And I was like, wow, I can't believe that I'm talking to a 16-year-old. So right on point with what you said.
Who's also done art, designed video games.
Yes. Yeah, the video designing video games. I don't know.
I don't like to code that
what?
much.
Oh my gosh, I'm happy I can open my email every day.
Yeah, right. I get a new app I get a new software update on my phone. I'm worried about what that's going to mean tomorrow.
So, true that so much.
Yeah, and it's an interesting industry too. You don't hear so much. Like I kind of mentioned her. I think there's been a shift in the comic book industry, more about the story now. It's not so much. There's still that collection piece out there, but the content is more of than what it used to be before. A lot of it was about collecting and that kind of stuff, and that all went from that mentality we had like in the 80s and 90s. And somewhere I still have those Superman issues when they killed him. And then, like, they brought him back in, like, 4 different kinds of Superman. I had to buy 4 different kinds of return issues. I got them somewhere. I don't know how much they're actually worth, but back in the day, it was a big deal, to make that purchase from, and especially an old baseball card collector like I was, into comic books.
Yeah, I still have my baseball cards from way back from the 70s when I started collecting, but I dabbled every once in a while in comics, but I never really dove into it. I remember reading them, but never collecting them.
Yeah.
Wish I did, because like you had mentioned, I had seen some of those originals from way back. Yeah. So pretty cool. And I know I mentioned when we were talking to Seda that, the female influence in this magazine, but in her comic, but it's also male. It's not just for girls.
Right.
It's for boys and girls. They're both will enjoy this, because she's done a great representation for both boys and girls in this adventure series.
Yeah,
that
we
she's
just
created.
And we just got what you referred to as the Ashcan version, which is just basically a preview of the whole thing, 8 pages or so. And a lot of work and a lot of story just told in the first 8 pages. So there's a lot more to come. That's for sure.
Another 92 pages. She said it's a 100-page set.
Yeah.
And she could only talk about the first 8 that she was able to share. I tried everything I could to get a little bit more, but that's
right.
Well, I guess, like she said, we'll have to buy the issue.
Exactly.
So we want to remind everybody, if you want to help Seda and you're interested in following Soulstream, go to a comic book store and tell them about it, that you'd like to see it on the racks available. January 13th is the first date that it can be in a comic book store. So go to one of the local Bakersfield or Lancaster stores or wherever you're listening and tell them about Soulstream. Seda Wolf. So it's Seda Wolf, WOOLF, and it's Soulstream is the name of the comic. So we really wish her well with that. A couple other things. Want to remind people about the holiday decorating contest in the city. We're hoping that we'll have partnership to go beyond that. We can't, I guess I shouldn't talk about that yet because it's not official. Again, they got a little bit more out of me than we could get out of Seda.
Right.
And then, of course, if you've got any topics, ideas, things that you'd like us to discuss, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, media@TehachapiCityHall.com.
Yeah, this is how we basically got made aware of Seda, was that email from from that address, media@TehachapicityHall.com. So let us know about other stories and other things happening around in the community. We're happy to feature them because there's a lot to be told, and there's also a lot of creativity out there as well. I even got my wheels turning in terms of people that I know that are in this industry that live in Tehachapi, thinking maybe it would be a good connection to get Seda and these people connected because, they're professional animators and she wants to do that. So those kind of wheels start to turn and those connections start to be made.
Exactly. So don't forget, it's Soulstream. It's available in January, on January 13th. And you have to ask the comic book stores to carry it. They're trying to push it, but I know it'll help if they get some customers that say, hey, we want to check it out. And again, send us those emails, media@TehachapicityHall.com. Corey, thanks for joining me today in the conversation with Seda.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking comic books. That's always fun.
That was a no-brainer.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. Talking,
it was an easy topic.
Like I said, don't have a big background, but I got enough stories in comic books to know and to appreciate it. So.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
So again, thanks to Seda, and we appreciate your time here on Tehachapod, and we'll catch you on a future episode.
Tehachapod is a conversation about Tehachapi designed for the people who live here or who would like to know more about this mountaintop community. If you have a question you would like answered, email media@TehachapicityHall.com. We will try to answer it on a future episode of Tehachapod.